The Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Well, once again, we have a very ambitious agenda. We're going to start with identical bills and similar House bills. Then we will be followed by a presentation on the January revenue report by Secretary Lane. And then we will hear other House bills. And then we will conclude with additional House bills that were referred to us just yesterday. Turning to the House bills that are identical to Senate bills, I'm going to ask that April read the bill number of each bill, the title, and provide a brief description. Committee members, you may wish for a bill to be taken out of the block, and please make that motion as we go through the list. April.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first bill is House Bill 2047, Delegate Bourne's bill. This has to do with the consideration of mental condition, et cetera, in criminal proceedings. It's identical to Senator McClellan's bill, Senate Bill 1315, which passed the Senate 25 yes, 13 no, and the Senate budget included $100,000 for it in the second year.
Madam Chairman, could that come out of the block?
Yes, that's out of the block.
All right. The next bill is House Bill 2032, Delegate Goditis' bill. This has to do with the application of laws to employee safety for domestic service. It currently is conformed and identical to Senate Bill 1310. Senator McClellan's bill, that passed the Senate 21 yes, 18 no. There is no funding in the House budget, but the Senate budget has $50,000. I did note that Senator McClellan had asked if it included both the workplace safety aspects and the human rights components, and it does. That's my understanding, Senator McClellan.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator McClellan.
can that one come out of the block?
That one is out of the block.
The next bill, House Bill 1818, Delegate Heretic's bill. This has to do with the presumption of compensability of certain diseases under workers' compensation. It is currently identical to Senate Bill 1275, Senator Marsden's bill, which passed the Senate 39 yes, 0 no. There is no funding in the House budget, but the Senate budget included $124,000.
Yes. Leave it. Maybe a block of one. Let's see.
All right, the next bill, House Bill 2110. This is Delegate Herring's bill. This one is This is related to the Virginia Criminal Sentencing Commission's collection and dissemination on an annual basis of pretrial data. It is identical to Senator Lucas's bill, Senate Bill 1391, which passed the Senate 39 yes, 0 no. The next bill is House Bill 2117. This is Delegate Van Valkenburg's bill, and this has to do with funds expended for special education programs under the Children's Services Act. It is identical to Senate Bill 1313, Senator Mason's bill, which passed the Senate 39 yes, 0 no. And Madam Chair, those are the identical bills.
Okay, we will now vote on the bills in a block. That would be House Bills 1818, House Bill 2110, and House Bill 2117.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator McClellan.
unless someone wants to keep it out of the block, House Bill 2032 can go back in.
I would request that it not go back in.
Okay.
Okay, so we are now voting on the block with those three bills. All in favor, please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bills in the block are reported. Let's go back now to House Bill 2047.
Madam Chair, I move that House Bill 2047 be reported.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2047 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, noes 4.
Ayes 15, noes 4. The bill is reported.
I'm
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 11. That was. Okay, House Bill 2032.
Madam Chair, I move that House Bill 2032 report.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2032 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4. The bill is reported. Next is House Bill 1818. Was that in the block? I'm sorry. Okay. So we have finished with that section. We're now going to House bills that are similar to Senate bills.
Madam Chair, the first of those is House Bill 2218. This is Delegate Hayes' bill. This has to do with the permitting processing to produce and distribute cannabis products for pharmaceutical processors. It has a non-general fund impact. It is a companion bill to Senator Lucas' bill, Senate Bill 1333, which passed the Senate 32 yes, 2 no. But it has to do with the production of botanical cannabis. It has some differences related to the 90-day supply, the specified number of ounces around dispensing, but otherwise it is not substantially different to Senator Lucas's bill.
Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2218 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
It finally showed up. Ayes 14, nays 1. The bill's reported.
Madam Chair, the next bill is House Bill 2269. This is Delegate Heretic's bill. This has to do with the revenue share for projects and systems under solar energy projects and energy storage systems. It is similar to another House bill, but also similar to Senate Bill 1201, Senator Peterson's bill, which passed the Senate 38 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention. It allows the locality by ordinance to assess a revenue share of up to $1,400 per megawatt of capacity on energy storage systems.
Is there a motion on the bill? Senator Deeds.
Does it make sense to conform this bill to the Senate bill?
We could, if you'd like to.
Okay.
They're not inconsistent.
They're not inconsistent?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, this is Charles Kennington. You could conform it. This bill deals with just a section, a part of what the other two bills dealt with, so it would not be, in conflict if you pass this bill separately.
Okay, is there a motion then on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2269 be reported. Please record your vote.
Senator McClellan. Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill is reported.
Madam Chair, the next bill, House Bill 1893, is Delegate Hurst's bill. This has to do with the creation of authority in Planning District 4 for a new River Valley Passenger Rail Station Authority. It is substantially identical to Senate Bill 1212, Senator Edwards' bill, which passed the Senate 38 yes, 0 no. The only difference is language explicitly prohibiting the authority for having condemnation power, but Jason reported that the separate entities already had condemnation power, so it would be fine the way it is, or you could conform it.
Are there any questions on the bill? Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1893 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill's reported.
Madam Chair, House Bill 2207 is the next bill. This is from Delegate Jones. This has to do with the presumption of compensability for COVID-19 under workers' compensation. It was already conformed to Senate Bill 1375, Senator Sazal's bill, but it was also amended to add regional jail officers, and that is the only difference at this time.
Are there any questions about the bill? Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2207 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill is reported.
Madam Chair, the next bill, House Bill 1992, is a bill from Delegate Murphy. It has it relates to conviction for assault and battery of a family member under firearms and purchases. It has a Woodrum impact. I do believe, however, that the patron might have a substitute that would possibly remove the fiscal impact. I don't know if
Is there a
Delegate Murphy-
substitute?
Patron is here.
Good morning, Delegate.
Good morning.
Do you have a
Madam-
substitute?
I do have a substitute. I believe that you have a copy of it there. It reduces the fiscal impact to 0. The substitute changes the penalty for selling a firearm to someone prohibited under the provisions of this bill from a Class 4 felony to a Class 1 misdemeanor. And so now that the bill has a 3-year automatic restoration, making it a Class 1 misdemeanor to sell a firearm might be, well, it would indicate that it wouldn't have a fiscal impact.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to move the substitute? Substitute's been moved and seconded to be adopted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Substitute is adopted. Is there a motion on the bill?
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this bill. I thank Delegate Murphy for being flexible and meeting some of the concerns of people about the original bill, which died on the Senate floor, the Senate version. This one is much more targeted towards actual spousal abuse or intimate partner abuse. And also, it does have a 3-year time limit on the loss of a Second Amendment right. So I think it addresses the problem in a much more surgical way. And that being the case, I move we report the bill.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1992, in the nature of a substitute, be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4. The bill is gets through the committee. Okay, next up is House Bill 2167.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Delegate Scott's bill. This has to do with monthly reports and discretionary early consideration related to parole. And it's very similar to Senate Bill 1397, Senator Norman's bill, which passed the Senate 37-6-3-no regarding the notification to the Commonwealth's attorney prior to the conditional release of geriatric or terminally ill inmates. This bill expands the method by which the parole board must notify the Commonwealth's attorney to include email or electronic means at least 21 days prior to the release on discretionary parole of any inmate convicted of a felony and sentenced to a term of 10 or more years.
It's been moved, and is there a second to report? And seconded that the bill be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill's reported. Okay, now we're going to take a very important break and get some good news from the Secretary of Finance, Aubrey Lane. Aubrey, are you there? And welcome if you are.
Yes, ma'am, I am here. I had to find the unmute button. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me today. I've looked at your agenda. I know you've got quite a bit, so I'll try to go through this quickly. If we could go to the next slide, please. Just what I want to try to do today is go through quickly where our revenues are year to date, and then the mid-session review forecast, revenue review forecast that the governor sent down to the chairs of the Money Committee this week, adding additional revenues to our forecast. Next page, please. Madam Chair, I'm not going to spend much time here because, quite frankly, these metrics have not been very indicative of our revenues ever since this pandemic began. As a proxy, the economy is usually a fairly good one in relation to our revenues if we were in a normal business cycle, whether it be an uptick or a downtick. But that's not what we're in. We're in a forced closing of businesses because of a pandemic. And so what we have is a substantial demand that is still out there, but the supply has been restricted because of the closing of businesses. So these tend to be very lagging, if anything at all, and have not been very indicative of how our revenues have fared. In fact, I would suggest going forward, probably a more significant level of metrics to look at is the level of infection, the level of vaccination that we're able to receive when we receive community immunity, and the type of closings that we're going to have related to this. That has been more indicative because of the type and nature of this particular economic downturn. It goes back to what we said from the very beginning. If we get the health crisis under control, the economy is going to come back, and it has done so. And in fact, there have been many businesses that have found a way to navigate this and have done very well during this particular last year of dealing with this pandemic. I have a few more slides as we go on, but Madam Chair, I really want to point out why this has been the case and us being able to predict our revenues going forward, quite frankly, because we just don't have models that have dealt with this in the past. So next page, please. I will point out, back to page 4, if you would, please. Excuse me, skipped a couple ahead here. Yeah, right there. When we get to one point to really hit home here is that second bullet here. No doubt the Federal Reserve and the monetary stimulus and the fiscal stimulus that the federal government has put out as quickly, and even though we may have wished it was sooner, it's been quicker than most recessions in the past, and that has really kept up the demand side. There is quite a bit of money, not only with our businesses, but with individuals because of transfer payments. And of course, now we're talking about another $1.9 trillion stimulus. So I don't see anything in the near future that's going to cause this to abate, the demand side, because of the money flowing into the economy from the federal authorities. In fact, if I had to describe what was going on in Virginia, I'd say it's reverse sequestration, or the flip side of sequestration. You remember that back in 2009 and 10, when that part of our economy was curtailed because of fiscal policy. Well, that has been the benefit. If you go back to 2014, JLARC said that this part of our economy was about 20% related to this. In 2017, Old Dominion said if you all add in the multiplier effect, it's over 30%. And remember, we talk about defense spending, but 2/3 of these federal dollars that come to Virginia are non-defense related. They're like in our companies like Amazon and Microsoft, those large contractors that do business with the federal government. So this particular industry, or this part of our economy, has done extremely well. They've actually benefited significantly as a result of this particular type of economic shutdown that we've seen. The other side of this, I would point out, it's been a service recession. Those service industries like leisure and hotel, they're the ones that have been hit. But as I've mentioned before, the loss of jobs, the loss of revenue in those industries do not compare to the gains that we have seen in the defense side, this federal spending supported part of our economy. As I mentioned before, we tend to get a ding sometimes in the normal course of things because we're so related to it, but we have benefited significantly from that as we move, as over the last 12 months because of being a large part of our economy. Next page, please. So which brings us to our revenues. This is the revenues for January. We were down about 2%, but that was not unexpected. We had one fewer deposit day payroll withholding, which I'll get to. So that was somewhere 100 to 130 million dollars. But where we stand to date, we are $589 million ahead of the revenue budget that's currently in place, and about $736 million ahead of the prior year. This decline has been much less than expected, and a lot of that has to do not only with the mix of our economy, but those non-related payroll parts of our revenues that have done well. Next page, please. What I wanted to point here, I went back and had our economists look at February of last year, 2020, through the current year, the whole year pretty much that we've been impacted in the pandemic. And I've looked at it for 3 years. And if you look at this, the blue bar is the current bar. You can see in April and May, we had a little bit. Some of that had to do a little bit of reduction in revenue. Some of that had to do related to our changing of our income tax payments due instead of May 1st to June 1st. But you can see that the economy and our revenues have performed remarkably close to a normal type of a revenue collection. So businesses and individuals have found a way to get around some of these closings and have continued to do well during this pandemic. Obviously, there are those that have not done so well, and they need our attention. But the ones that have offset to almost a normal type of revenue profile. And I've got some more graphs on this later when we get to the revenue projections. But wanted to show you that I don't think anybody here a year ago would have said we were going to have a fairly similar revenue collection in the midst of a pandemic. And next slide, please. Of course, most of our revenues, although we have a diverse basket of revenues we look at, the majority relate to individuals, and the largest part of that is the withholding tax collections. We are trending a little bit below what our projections are for this particular revenue source, although I would point out that we're getting ready to go up against a fairly weak April, May, and June of last year, where we anticipate picking back some of this. But again, if you look at January, we were down 12.6%. That had to do with the extra day we had in last December. If you go back and look at that bar in December, we were up almost 11%. So overall, this has held up fairly well, right about what we expected in the forecast that we did just several months ago. Again, higher paying jobs have been added. The jobs that we have been lost have been in service industries and have been tended to be a little less paying than the ones that have been added. I'll also point out here, larger firms have tended to do better than smaller firms, and we've talked about that in the past. But overall, withholding tax collections trending about what we think, and we expect that to pick up as we get into the second half and some of the weaker performance that we had because of the immediate shutdown in March, April, and May last year of our businesses. Next slide, please. Of course, non-withholding tax collections are a big part of our personal income tax equation, and they have held up well. January was up 12.2%. That is our first indication of the wealth effect that as a resulting of the non-withholding. This is related to all current year activity, current fiscal year activity, and that has held up well. Now, as you know, we get a large final payment of this in April and May when people finalize their taxes, but the early indications are wealth generation has remained fine and strong during the pandemic. Again, it's been very, very isolated to a group that happened to own those stocks and bonds, but the stock market. But overall, if we look at our history, it has held up well. I would expect that to continue going forward. We have a collar, as you know. We don't allow ourselves to budget significantly higher or lower in this particular category, so it's so volatile. But if we had to look at it, it has an upward bias based on the activity we've seen to date. Next slide, please. So when you add it all together, individual income tax is the final portion is tax refunds, and that has been about consistent with previous years too, particularly when you take out the $110 million that we know was related to last year because of the timing of the federal tax payments. So overall, almost 70% of our revenues related to individual income tax refunds are trending about what we thought during this type during the pandemic, and have held up very well. And we do expect that to pick up, not only because we're going against weak numbers, but also because vaccination programs and public confidence seems to be increasing, and employers look to be starting to add back to their payrolls. Next slide, please. Sales tax collections have been the real big surprise, and quite frankly, where most of the money is coming from with the new revenue forecast. Again, I mentioned earlier, no doubt this has been heavily supported by the fiscal stimulus that has been paid to individuals, not only in Virginia, but across the country as it relates to transfer payments and unemployment to help people weather those that were laid off during this pandemic. It has been broad-based. It is obviously a reflection of our ability to capture internet sales. Use tax are now over 30%. They've doubled almost 30% of our collections because of us capturing that. And with the another stimulus on the horizon, it appears. And if you look at most economists report that January was a surge in spending, that it looks like this is going to continue because of the demand side of it and the stimulus going into this. So this is one area that we will see continue going forward. And particularly if we look at the second part of this year, if we do get back, vaccination programs are successful, we get close to herd immunity, this could be a significant bounce, even though it's remained strong during the last 12 months. Next slide, please. Corporate income taxes have also held up well. Part of this could be a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed a couple of years ago. But overall, this reflects this trend where the larger companies have been able to weather this very small. And if you go back and look at our very well, if you look at our revenues in this area, it's dominated by several large companies, and they have been able to hold up. Have no idea if this will be continuing. However, it does look like we have some abilities in the current year to recognize some of this revenue as we move forward. A lot of this, as you know, these companies don't have the same calendar year end or fiscal year end as the state does. Many have calendar and other fiscal year ends. So this makes this a volatile source. But through the first 7 months of this year, it's up substantially and allows us to take some of that, I believe, into our forecast. Next slide, please. Recordation taxes are another side of this that have held up extremely well. Low interest rates, housing has remained strong, and therefore mortgages, refinancings have remained strong. And this, again, this revenue source continues to perform well, allows us to take some more revenue into this year. Again, many economists believe housing may have peaked, but we've heard that before. Not sure if this will trend into the coming year, but certainly it has been a very good fiscal year 21 for this revenue source. One minor, but not significant, but minor downturn is the insurance rebates that we thought we would see have started to come back. We were up from almost 56.1 million from 40 million in the previous year. And that has to do with these insurance companies giving their customers rebates because they're not driving and able to use the product. So we've adjusted that a little bit in our revenue forecast as we go forward. Next page, please. So when you highlight all this, if you look at the top, the net individual, we're trending about where we thought we would be and have made no suggestions that we should change our forecast for individual. And that includes withholding, non-withholding, and refunds. However, if you look down below that, in the sales, the corporate, and wills, that's where the monies are. We're trending significantly higher in those revenue sources, a little bit lower in our insurance revenues. And we've adjusted that in the proposed additional revenues that we have sent to you for your deliberation. Again, right now we're about $589 million through the forecast in January. I'll get to the additional revenues, but we would, even with the additional revenues we're suggesting, which are mostly in the bank, we would be not be using all of the additional monies that we are ahead right now of the forecast. Next slide, please. Which brings us to the forecast. We have taken this data and analyzed it not only for the first 6 months or 7 months of this current fiscal year, but since this recession began. And none of this is related to tax policy. This is all related to our companies and individuals in the Commonwealth being able to navigate this pandemic. Again, it is restoring monies that we had taken out originally. As you recall, a year ago, we had to take, when we passed your budget, we immediately had to take $2.7 billion out of our revenues, not knowing where we were headed. And this is adding back some of those. Again, most of it is money in the bank. We're either using money in the bank or a run rate that is less than what we're actually incurring. If you look at our sales tax collections, what we're projecting in the future is actually below what we're actually running here. So we think this is still somewhat conservative. Next slide, please. This is a combination slide to the one I showed you earlier by month related to the individual collections. This is the total receipts from February of last year through January of this year, right during the entire time of this pandemic. And you can see our revenues have continued to steadily increase. In fact, in 2018, we collected $20 billion in total general fund collections during this period. In 2019, we did 22.3. This year, we've done 22.5. So we have not seen a reduction as related to the prior year as a result of the pandemic based on our general fund revenues. And again, I see nothing in the short term that would suggest that this is not going to continue. So next slide, please. When you get to it, the governor has recommended an additional $730.2 million to be added to the current biennium revenue projections. There's some of the things that we consider. There's been no significant change to the national outlook. In fact, I would suggest to you it's getting a little bit better. The sales tax model has been updated for 3/4 of 2020, so we have good data. I've mentioned this is money in the bank, and there are no other tax policy changes. We're not changing anything to do with individual taxes, whether it's withholding, non-withholding, or refunds. That has not changed at all, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, if you look at where we were, as I mentioned before, we had taken $2.7 billion out back in the when you were here months ago. We added back $1.2 billion, and this is adding another $730 million, which gets us to about 1.9, a little over 1.9 billion. Still about 800 million short of where we were, but substantially better than I think anybody would have thought we would have been 10 months ago. Next slide, please. So where that leaves us right now is that we would be able to have a slight reduction. I'll call you to the second to last column where it says February through June required to meet the estimate. We were down 5.2% in the previous year, where we'll think we're only going to be down slightly this year. A lot of that had to do with the individual taxes, as you can see up above, and we anticipate making that up. So we think, again, this is a fairly conservative add back. Next page, please. Just details specifically where the monies are. And if you see, we've changed nothing again related to withholding, non-withholding, or refunds. Sales taxes in the current year, 274 million plus the 27 million down below that relate to use taxes, 76 million for corporate and 52 million for wills, and slightly reducing our insurance proceeds because of those rebates that we've mentioned, which adds to adding $410 million and 0.1 million in the current year. Next slide. The only the revenue source that actually moves forward in the next year for the 320 million relates to the sales taxes. Nothing for corporate and wills, as we're not comfortable saying that's going to be continuing, but we are pretty comfortable for the reasons I've mentioned for sales taxes. So another $320.1 million in that year. That is continuing revenues, meaning these are not one-time revenues. They can be used for anything the General Assembly chooses to use them for because they are ongoing in nature. And Madam Chair, that completes my report.
Thank you, Aubrey. Does anyone have questions for the Secretary? Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Secretary Lane, thank you for an informative presentation. And I'll start with an editorial comment. While I appreciate that the revenues are beyond what we anticipated, the reality is we are still 800 million plus below what we had anticipated. And there are a lot of very aggressive, and I use this word advisedly, progressive ideas out there to spend a lot of money, and I would hope we would collectively exercise some restraint. But my question is that it goes back to slide number 10 and 11, which you don't need to flip to, but that showed the increase in the sales tax revenue as being very robust during these pandemic times. And my question is, do you think that the sales tax revenues are so robust as a result of the stimulus checks being spent by many recipients on retail purchases as opposed to perhaps paying for rents and utilities where not just Virginia but other states and nationally are providing, in essence, a subsidization? I recall hearing something on NPR that at one point Best Buy was totally sold out of large screen TVs and had a month's backlog in inventory. So that's a reality. And I'm just wondering, do you attribute the increase in that sales tax to the spending behavior?
Senator Norman, Madam Chair, there is no doubt that the spending behavior for sales tax, the consumers, has been robust. Most of it, as I've mentioned before, has been moved online. A lot of it has been moved to services that people could do outside that we are been able to collect those sales taxes on, whether they're buying camping equipment or other things. Senator Norman, we don't have anything that tracks any alternative uses of the monies in terms of tracking whether or not they're paying their rents. I can only confirm that sales and consumer spending has continued at a very robust package, and in fact increased actually some in January. Senator, whether it's been an offset against other uses, human nature being what there were, I'm sure some of that is, but we don't have anything to be able to track that to tell you definitively that's what they've used as an offset.
Madam Chairman, thank you. And Secretary Lane, thank you for your candor and your dancing.
Senator Peterson, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Aubrey, one of the things I'd noticed that popped out to me was the amount of the non-withholding that was up 12.4%. And non-withholding by definition is income that you received that you had not expected. Because if you expected it, you would have had it withheld. And how much of that is being driven by the stock market? Right now, the stock market's at 31,000, and I believe at this time last year it was probably around 21,000, maybe even a little bit below. So how much of that non-withholding is being driven by capital gains vis-a-vis businesses themselves being more profitable and paying dividends?
Senator Peterson, Madam Chair, substantially a lot of this has to do with the market effect. As you recall, back in the beginning of the year, the market went down, so there were a lot of people selling back then, which would cause them to have to report gains. Of course, they may have recouped it coming forward. The other thing I would point out, Senator Peterson, is we have seen, as I mentioned, both consumers, or individuals and businesses adapt. Many of those that were employed before are now working for themselves. And so they are not having a payroll withholding, but they are filing a non-withholding for every quarter because they're now self-employed. The gig economy sort of started that, but people are finding ways to move. So this may become just because it's the nature of what's happening here, Senator Peterson, as it used to be primarily related to people selling their businesses or selling stocks and bonds and having wealth generation. Now that it looks like more and more people are self-employed and may be paying us through here. I don't have final statistics to that. It's anecdotal, but just note that we do know that there are many more people that are self-employed than before, but no doubt, right, that the majority of this is driven by stock market gains. It is the wealth effect. And if this happens this way, it'll be the third year in a row that we have seen this and that would be very unusual for Virginia. Mm-hmm. Typically, once we have a good year, we give it back. We've had 2 good years. It looks like there may be a third year. And of course, the stock market has continued to climb through all this too. But that is just one little word of caution we should take into effect, because we get the final of this in April when we get those final returns, April and May.
Okay, is there any further question? Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. We always welcome your comments and wisdom, but especially when it's good news. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Now we're going to move to other House bills. These are bills that have not been heard previously by this committee. They have been mostly referred from other committees. And since that's the case, they will have had public comments in other committees, so we won't be hearing it here, public comments, but there are 5 or 6 that have come directly here that I will ask for public comments. So let's get started with House Bill 1989. Delegate Aird.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and thank you so much. Madam Chair, before you was House Bill 1989, and while this legislation came at the request of my locality, Chesterfield County, it really stands to benefit and impact all localities throughout the Commonwealth. Ultimately, the legislation will allow the health commissioner to work in conjunction with the local health districts to share data on confirmed cases of communicable diseases in real time during a declared public health emergency. Madam Chair, back in October, we witnessed locally our EMS workers and first responders, medical personnel responding to cases, particularly in nursing homes, and not knowing as they went in that there were outbreaks of COVID-19 on the premises. Ultimately, we saw this happen repeatedly as a result of not having real-time information. And so, Madam Chair, ultimately, we're just trying to adjust that process with this bill. Relative to the FIS that is accompanied by this legislation, it's my understanding that the Virginia Department of Health would likely be able to absorb the one-time cost by utilizing their $491 million federal grant for epidemiology and laboratory capacity funds. It's been shared with me that the Virginia Department of Health will be utilizing these funds anyway to make major system upgrades throughout their departments, and a system the system upgrades will accommodate the need to provide this real-time information as the bill is requesting. Furthermore, the House budget has included item 299.5H, which includes the non-general funds necessary to cover the one-time costs associated with implementing this legislation. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions? Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just looking at the fiscal notes that we have on this bill and would like to ask the delegate a question that is more for my information than adversarial. The first fiscal note we had said the fiscal impact of the bill is estimated at $956,000 in FY 2022 and then about $300,000 in general fund each year thereafter. And it includes 8 positions to design the system. And am I misreading something here that this is not creating a reoccurring cost?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and Senator Norman. To my understanding and the information I have is the information says that this will be a one-time cost for their system upgrades.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's sort of the recommendation of those of us who have looked over this bill that we make it contingent on CDC funding. And we have a committee substitute to that effect.
Okay, Madam Chair.
It sounds like that's fine with you since you expect the money anyway, so. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move the committee substitute.
The committee substitute's been moved. Is there a second? Second. And seconded. All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposition? No. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1989 be reported in the nature of a substitute. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. Next up is Delegate Askew, House Bill 1993.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, this morning I have before you all in the committee House Bill 1993. This bill requires that state agencies establish and maintain a comprehensive DEI strategic plan in coordination with the Governor's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The ultimate goal is that the state agency Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion strategic plan will eliminate the historically embedded systems of institutionalized inequities within the state agencies. I'll be the will of the committee to pass this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegate? This has a pretty small fiscal impact, as I note. None in 21 and 200,000 in 22, and it's in the governor's budget. So is there a motion on the?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1993 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, noes 1, abstentions 1.
Ayes 14, noes 1, abstention 1. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is Delegate Bell.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here to talk about House Bill 2230.
Yes, go ahead.
Members of the panel, this involves the supported decision-making agreements. The idea would be that there are different ways that someone with special needs can have help making important life decisions. At one end is a guardianship proceeding where they go to court and the decisions are actually made by the guardian. In the middle would be power of attorney that can be revoked by the person. This is a supported decision-making agreement where no rights are taken away, but a person helps them make hard life choices. This came up last year, you might recall. It was the bill before you was the product of a DBHDS work group, studied it for a year involving all the stakeholders and came back with the recommendations you see in the bill. The bill would have the department identify best practices, come up with existing forms, provide training, study ways that you could avoid fraud. And the hope is that this practice would be more common. It would appeal both to people that are looking at guardianship but are looking for a less restrictive alternative, and then probably the larger category where they're doing this entirely informally, just someone's helping grandma get through life decisions. And the hope would be that this would provide a better framework for that. It is currently legal but little used. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I don't hear any. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2230 be reported. Please record your vote.
I 16, no zero.
I 16, no zero. The bill's reported.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Delaney, House Bill 2133.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It's great to be with you all this morning. House Bill 2133 was a unanimous recommendation from the Crime Commission. This bill establishes a process for sex trafficking victims to have criminal convictions for prostitution, solicitation of prostitution, and maintaining a body place vacated and removed from their criminal records. The bill was amended in Senate Judiciary to offer more clear relief for juveniles, but this bill was a unanimous recommendation of the Crime Commission, and it creates a pathway for victims to vacate their criminal records in connection to sex trafficking.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Delaney? Is there motion on the bill?
The report. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2133 be reported. Please record your vote.
I 16, no zero.
I 16, no zero. Bill's reported. Next
Thank you.
Good to see you this morning, Carrie. Next up is House Bill 2323, Delegate Edmonds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, House Bill 2323 simply clarifies that the provisions of Code Section 15.2-4116 should include all former regional library systems, regardless of when a former city reverted to a town. Basically, the Halifax South Boston library system is the only library this would apply to. There was no, the fiscal impact was that the $12,000 annually would have to come out of the other regional libraries funds, but it was noted in the fiscal implications that it was minimal. So there was no budget amendment necessary.
Okay. I would just point out that the Senate has added $1 million to the library fund. So there will be additional money coming in.
Okay, well, good.
Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2323 be reported. All in favor, but record your vote.
I 16, no zero.
I 16, no zero. The bill's reported. Next is Delegate Hayes. Good to see you. Next is Delegate Hayes, House Bill 2223.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before us, we have House Bill 2223. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, pursuant to the Code of Virginia Treasury Division of Risk Management, provides sufficient bonding for all executive branch employees and the certain other officers of the Commonwealth. This bill removes some of the obsolete code language that directs certain officers and board members to procure individual bond currently mandated by statute, which are redundant, as in the case here of Department of Risk Management covers those same individuals. We do have members of the administration available if there are any questions specifically.
Thank you. I don't think the bill's in any trouble and it has no fiscal impact. So It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2223 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bills are reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Madam Chair, I did have one other bill, House Bill 2307, that I believe is either identical or a similar bill to Senator Marsden's data privacy bill. But for some reason, it wasn't listed as identical.
Yes, we will handle that. We already passed it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me find out. April.
Madam Chair, it is on the supplemental calendar, but it is very similar to Senator Marsden's bill, and I don't believe it's in any trouble, and we are happy to handle it unless you want to move it forward.
Delegate, we'll handle it when we get to that point in the docket. It's not in any trouble.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Now I lost my place. Okay. House Bill 1820, Delegate Helmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 1820 establishes broad-based categorical eligibility for SNAP in Virginia. It has the practical effect of bringing in over $100 million of federal money to Virginia, creating about $200 million in economic activity, and giving access to food to about 25,000 families and 70,000 students in higher education. It's supported by the governor and multiple organizations. It's in the governor's budget as well as the Senate budget that this committee passed.
Sounds like
happy to answer any questions.
It sounds like a great investment. Are there any questions for Delegate Helmer?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1820 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you. Next is Delegate Herring, House Bill 2111.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning. This bill, HB 2111, has to do with maternal health data task force. If Madam Chair and members of the committee recall, in 2019, there was established the maternal mortality review team within the Virginia Department of Health, which took a look at the mortality rates in Virginia. And the review found that not only Black women are more likely to die prenatal and postpartum periods, they're particularly more likely to die of natural causes than white women are. So this bill will establish a maternal health data task force to evaluate state level data sources, look at state level data points, examine barriers, preventing collection of information, and help guide the Commonwealth into developing policy options to address the maternal mortality rate. There is a FIS associated with this bill, Madam Chair. The most of the FIS has to do with the staffing that is involved for this task force. And I apologize, I just wanted to give you the specific numbers. Okay. The provisions, I apologize. Yes, go ahead, Madam Chair.
I believe the specific number is 151,000 general fund in 2022.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a full
and it's
and
included
a
in your budget, I understand. Okay.
Yes, it is. Right. And then there's some. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to give an editorial comment. I remember way back 30 years ago in the Belial's administration, when I was on the chairing the Social Services Board, this was a major problem back then. And we have really never resolved it. And anything we can do, I think we must do. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's been moved the bill be reported. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, record your vote.
Ayes 16, no zero.
Ayes 16, no zero. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next is Delegate Hodges, House Bill 2219.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, you have before you House Bill 2219, which is a freedom of choice bill. The bill clarifies that not only for retail pharmacy, but also for specialty pharmacy drugs, that a PBM must allow a pharmacy to obtain a contract if the pharmacy meets the terms and conditions of that contract. And it's important to note that the PBM is the one that sets these terms and conditions. Presently, we have observed pharmacies spending $50,000 or more to obtain a required certification for specialty services, only to be informed that they are not eligible for that contract. We do believe that competition ultimately is a good thing, Madam Chairman. The bill also requires carriers and PBMs to respond to a contract request within 60 days. Even the retail pharmacies in Virginia were observing delays as long as 11 months for the health plan, the carriers, or the PBM to respond to a contract request after completing the necessary credentialing. And that's a bill in a nutshell, Madam Chairman.
Are there questions for Delegate Hodges? Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2219 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no zero.
Ayes 16, no zero. The bill is reported.
Thank you.
Next is Delegate Hope, House Bill 1912.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning, Delegate.
House Bill 1912 would end child support payment requirements on parents to the Department of Social Services while their children are incarcerated in the Department of Juvenile Justice. It would eliminate the requirement that DJJ apply for child support with social services and eliminate the requirement for social services to enforce child support obligations against parents and families of incarcerated youths. This law disproportionately impacts Black families and other people of color. Of the 613 parents of incarcerated youth against whom support is assessed or collected, 67% are Black. Only 134 of those parents, or 22%, are white. There is a FIS on this, and that's why it's before the committee, because juvenile justice relies on these payments for their operating costs. But I just think fundamentally these parents, which typically be lower income, should not be supporting these services, and we should find another way to fund it. That's the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions for the delegate? I'm just curious, is it also a big burden on child support enforcement officials to try to get this money?
Madam Chair, I do believe that they take a lot of extra time to collect this, and I'm sure they don't always get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a motion on the bill?
Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1912 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, noes 2.
Ayes 14, noes 2. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have another bill that
You
did
actually
not
have
get-
two. You have
I have two more, yes, Madam
How
Chair.
about,
House
let's
Bill-
do House Bill 2165.
All right, and this bill did not get heard in a committee. This is the first committee to hear it, and so it's up to you whether to hear testimony. I know there's people in support of the bill. This bill is a recommendation from the Commission to examine racial inequality in Virginia law. This is a commission established by the governor in June of 2019 to task with identifying the vestiges of racial discrimination that still remain in our laws today. As you know, many heirs property owners are unaware of the state of their title, leading to delinquent property taxes. So the intent of this bill is to allow those heirs property owners to claim property and give them additional time to pay those delinquent taxes. So it makes three changes in the code. The first thing is a final judicial order confirming the property sale shall not be finalized any sooner than 90 days following notice to the property owners. Secondly, it allows the localities and the owners of the property to enter into a mutual agreement for the payment of the delinquent taxes for a period up to 60 months. This changes the current law, which is set at 36 months. And finally, it creates a process by which the individual who's asserting ownership rights on the property, but who's not a party to the ongoing proceeding, to be added as a parties to the judicial proceeding. If the court determines that the individual is the owner of the property, that individual may enter into a mutual agreement with the locality to pay all the delinquent tax amounts. I'm not aware of any opposition to the bill, but I know there are people here to speak in support.
Okay, I see Senator Norman has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would ask Delegate Hope is that if we were to, I like 2 out of the 3 provisions that you have in there. My question as to the third one is if we extend from 36 months, which is 3 years, to 60 months, which is 5 years, to curtail the payment of the delinquent tax, if in fact the landowner is set up on a reoccurring payment plan and they default under it, can the balance then be accelerated and called?
Madam Chair, I mean, I would ask some of the people that are put the bill together to see whether that's something that they could support or not. I know it wasn't the recommendation of the commission.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Peterson.
I think I could like this bill if it's a may as opposed to a shall. In other words, is this discretionary to the local treasurer, or are we mandating this?
Delegate
Well, yeah, no, I believe it's a shall.
It is.
Well, it allows locality, so the locality is, so it allows it, so it is a may, is a permissive.
Well,
So it
hold on,
allows locality to enter into the mutual agreement.
Okay, I
That's
just got
right.
2 different answers in 30 seconds. Is it a may or a shall?
It's a may.
All right.
Okay, any further questions? All right, we will give 3 minutes to each side on this bill, starting with the proponents.
If those who support the bill could please raise their hands in Zoom to be moved into the panel. And we'll start with Alan Albert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I represent the Treasurers Association of Virginia. We had the privilege to work with the patron on this bill to address some of the complicated technical issues that go with this. To answer Senator Peterson's question, the installment plan is always in the discretion of the treasurer, but generally speaking, treasurers are very happy to have somebody who wants to pay the taxes. These are typically properties that have been delinquent for at least 3 years, often 4 or 5 or more. We believe this will work the way it is. I'd be glad to answer any technical questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Next, we have Jessica Killeen.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Killeen. I'm Deputy Counsel to Governor Northam, and we strongly support this bill, but I want to respect the committee's time and allow Cynthia Hudson, who's chair of the commission, and Lucas Freeman, a UVA law student who worked on this bill, to speak to you all today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cynthia, please go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Speaking from personal impactful experiences regarding so-called heir property, as well as in my capacity as chair of the Governor's Commission to examine racial inequity in Virginia law, I urge the committee to act favorably on this bill, which was indeed a recommendation of the commission and the valuable work of some very diligent law students at UVA, including Lucas Freeman, to whom I yield time. Thank you.
Lucas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. My name is Lucas Freeman. I'm a third-year law student at UVA and member of the State and Local Government Policy Clinic under Director Andy Block. As part of the clinic, I've conducted legal and policy research for the Governor's Commission to examine racial inequity in Virginia law and was involved in the development of the policy proposal that became House Bill 2165. To be brief, this bill creates more opportunities for land to remain in the families that are the most vulnerable to intergenerational wealth loss, and it creates a tax sale system that is more fair while causing as little disruption as possible to the processes that localities currently employ. While the views I express are mine alone and not those of the law school or the University of Virginia, I hope you'll support this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, is there any hand raised in opposition?
None that I can see, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2165 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0. The bill's reported. Delegate Hope, you have one more. House Bill.
Final bill, Madam Chair. House Bill 2166, and I do have two amendments that I'd like the committee to consider, and I can explain them.
Madam
Please
Chair.
briefly explain them.
The two amendments in three places. This is from consumers. This adds language to request that the judge take an individual's job or schooling as factors into the order. And the second one was at the request of the CSBs. It deletes some redundant language that is captured elsewhere in the process where that is material not adherence.
Is there a
So no
motion
more
to
technical.
adopt the amendments?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. The amendments be adopted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They're adopted. And now your bill, Senator Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is a work group that's been about a 2.5-year process. The work group was headed by the Department of Behavioral Health and also University of Virginia. We had multiple people from the CSBs, NAMI Virginia, the Office of the Supreme Court, Mental Health America, a special justice out of Lynchburg, the Treatment Advocacy Center, the Disability Law Center, Vocal, and a number of mental health peers. These make very badly needed reforms to our mandatory outpatient treatment to clarify provisions to make it more of a useful option for individuals that meet the criteria, those that are a danger to themselves or others, but would be doing so in a least restrictive model care. This bill also includes numerous protections for consumers. We put a lot of work into this. I will emphasize that this is a consensus proposal that is modeled after best practices. There's a lot of give and take in this proposal. There are a couple areas of disagreement that some of the consumers raised. Namely, it's changing the agreement that an individual agree to be subject to a mandatory outpatient treatment. And we're also expanding the length of time that the mandatory outpatient treatment exists. But the majority of the changes are by 100% consensus by all. This does, I just want to point out to you, this has a delayed enactment clause of July of 2022.
Are there questions for Delegate Hope?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Norman.
As a preface to my question, I would say to Delegate Hope that in my earlier career, I've done thousands of commitment hearings and have some reasonable knowledge about the process. I'm looking at the second note that we have, and it says eliminates the requirement that a person to agree to abide by the MOT plan to be eligible, instead requires the judge or special justice, which it normally is a special justice, find the person to adhere to the MOT plan. Am I reading that correctly? And my experience has been that generally the patient making that transition is more highly motivated if in fact there's a requirement that the person adhere to the plan.
No, Madam Chair, that's exactly right, because we have found that some people maybe don't tell the truth, and they try to because they know that they can get out of it. But then the next thing you know, they're off of the plan, and they have to bring them back in. This results in more people being hospitalized. This is mandatory outpatient treatment. I'm not even sure that was the intent from the beginning. You can't really have mandatory if you think that the individual has to agree to it. And so this is modeled after best practices throughout the country, and that's why we're making the change.
I thank the gentleman.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson. No? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator Deeds.
Over the years, all these MOT bills have been referred to the subcommittee that I've chaired, and the problem in the beginning is MOT wasn't really MOT. It wasn't mandatory. And so the families of people that have struggled with mental illness have struggled with the MOT law, and I think Delegate Hope has been trying to address that for a number of years. This legislation received a lot of input, I think, from Professor Bonnie and his group at UVA. So there have been a lot of chefs in the kitchen, and this is probably as close to a consensus as you're going to get.
Thank you, that's helpful. Are there any further questions? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2166 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0, the bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next is Delegate Hudson with House Bill 2040.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 2040 addresses two of the major challenges that Virginia workers faced with unemployment compensation this year. There is a small line amendment that was shared with us by VEC.
Could the clerk read the amendment or this?
Yes, Madam Chair and Delegate Hudson, this is Connor Garska from DLS. So the amendment would be in the third enactment, which already provides that amounts that are paid or collected against overpayment shall not be reimbursed. What the amendment does is it says that there's an exception for that for benefits that are paid under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program.
And Madam Chair, that amendment will permit VEC to align with a recent administrative agreement with the U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on the amendment? It's been moved and seconded that the amendment be adopted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment's adopted. Delegate Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank our partners at VEC. They've been tremendous partners in this bill every step of the way. And I know we have representatives from the agency on hand to testify if there are any questions. Unemployment claims were the #1 reason that constituents contacted me last year. And I know there are many members of this body who could say the same. This bill does two things to address two of the biggest challenges they faced. First, it codifies the governor's directive from December that a claimant who is granted benefits can't have those benefits cut off until they're afforded due process in a hearing. And second, the bill will waive mistaken overpayments to workers who received a payment by no fault of their own if recovering that payment would deprive the individual of income required for basic necessities like shelter, food, and medicine. These are the federal standards for overpayment waivers, and 40 other states already authorize similar waivers, but Virginia is not yet one of them. To the financial points, there will be no impact on the employer pool tax to cover these claims. All benefit costs will accrue to the UI Trust Fund, and there is a general fund impact of $250,000 per year for VEC to hire 5 full-time equivalents to assist in processing claims. The bill is supported by the Legal Aid Justice Center and the Virginia AFL-CIO, and thanks to our collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce on earlier drafts, they have no position on the bill.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Madam
Yes.
Chair.
Senator Barker.
I have one question, then I want to offer an amendment going forward. Is the time period for which people would not have to repay over payments to them, is that limited to a certain time period, or is it an open-ended thing that goes indefinitely?
Madam Chair, Senator Barker, the time period would be retroactive to the start of the pandemic, so March 15th, and then it would continue on in perpetuity, again matching the 40 other states that already grant overpayment waivers by custom and by traditional practice.
Madam Chair.
Well,
Senator Peterson.
Yeah, I got a couple questions here. One is, who actually pays the tax that subsidizes this program?
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, because the payments would be drawn from the trust fund, they are collected from employers who pay into the trust fund, but
right.
It would not result in any change to their tax rate.
Well, do you realize, further question, Madam Chair,
Senator Peterson.
do you realize that the trust fund, once it's drawn down, has to be replenished, and that's done by an assessment on every employer in the Commonwealth?
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, indeed I am aware. In fact, the governor has asked me to chair a work group in the coming year on refilling the trust fund.
Madam Chair.
Well, that's good to know. All right, further question.
Senator Peterson.
Are you aware that for example, if we allow people to keep benefits that they didn't earn, that money has to be replenished by higher taxes on these smaller businesses, or any business for that matter.
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that it will be replenished by the taxes that they will already be planned to pay, but it will not result in higher taxes. As I mentioned earlier, there will be no increase in the pool tax rate. I think it's important as a point of reference to note that the total cost of waiving overpayments for the foreseeable future would be $6 million a year. The balance of the trust fund this time last year was $1.5 billion. That means the trust fund cost of waiving overpayments, as 40 other states already do, is less than 0.5% of the trust fund balance pre-pandemic. So this is an important provision that we can adopt in order to prevent serious costs on the people who are least able to pay, that are spread out in very small increments over the trust fund pool for the employers who pay in. Indeed, that is the very purpose of an unemployment insurance system.
Thank you for educating me.
Madam Chair.
I would just like to add that I'm going to propose an amendment that for this biennium, this be paid from the general fund and not the trust fund. Next on my list is Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, I know in committee, the Commerce and Labor and this committee, we've heard a lot of words, but there are some that really need to be slowed down and considered. One, the cost of this went down dramatically since Commerce and Labor. It was 17 million then, now it's 6. I don't know that we know exactly the cost. Number two is there's...
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, this is the second time that we've tried to have a discussion, and it'd be great if we could finish the discussion before the interruption. Madam Chair, the other is that the discussion about the 40 states, it's a 40-state waiver. Virginia can take the 40-state waiver as well. It's a federal waiver. Madam Chair, I think to Senator Peterson's point, it's very, very clear that employers will pay this, and I'm so grateful for the chair's consideration of an amendment that would say this is a decision, a policy decision by the Commonwealth, and therefore the employers would not do it. The last thing, and I think it goes somewhat to Senator Parker's concern, is just ensuring that this isn't a permanent policy. If we decide to do this from a COVID perspective, because we are rushing payments out, that's one thing. But if this is a permanent change, then I think that's a much different bill, Madam Chair. So I struggle with some of the fundamentals, but I would hope that we would make sure employers don't, through their tax payments, have to actually pay for it. Number two, that this not be permanent. If it's going to be done for COVID, it should be done on a temporary basis, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Norman.
Madam Chair, may
Excuse me, Madam Chairman. Having had the opportunity to work both in academia and in practicalities, sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect, and I associate myself with the comments from Senator Peterson and Senator Newman. But it is interesting to me that if there is no additional fiscal impact on it, why VEC prepared a pro forma on what the projected increase would be in the employer's tax in order to restore the solvency of the fund.
Next, Senator Barker, then Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, there are two amendments I think that have been drafted that would like to offer at this time. One is to have a sunset on this as of June 30, 2022, so that this would not be open-ended. If someone wanted to extend it beyond that time, obviously, there could be legislation proposed, but that would basically set this as a sunset. And the second is to have, as the chair suggested, to have the cost of this during this biennium be covered by the general fund, so that there would be no passing these costs on to the employers.
So you are offering those amendments?
Offering those two amendments.
Okay, and it's been seconded by Senator Norman. Is there discussion on these? Delegate Hudson, do you have a comment on these?
Madam Chair, if that's the will of the committee, it's just fine. If I might just speak briefly to the points that Senator Newman raised. Nothing about the cost projections has changed. You'll note that the FIS is the same as it was in the Commerce Committee. There would be a one-time cost of $18 million in the first year. That's to cover the retroactive payments. The point that I was making to Senator Peterson is that the cost going forward in the future would be $6 million. That's because there were more claims played out in this year due to the recession. So nothing about the cost projections has changed. I think that VEC has reliable data about what we could expect, again, because this is not an unusual policy to adopt.
Thank you. Okay, so we have two amendments in front of us. One to have this paid for by general fund, and the other one to put a sunset at the end of the biennium. Discussion on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendments are adopted. Now, on the bill itself, I have people who've signed up. I don't know if they still want to speak. Senator Deeds?
I'd like to, the amendments are all right, but let's think about this the greater policy. In this pandemic, I can't think of any subject that I was contacted more about than the unemployment compensation. There was just a breakdown at the agency level because they were overwhelmed. And the federal law was changed to allow independent contractors to obtain unemployment compensation. That created a huge amount of confusion, and there were overpayments. Now, in the Commerce Committee, I think there was an estimate from VEC that 5% of payments are overpaid. Then they try to recover that money, but this money amounts to about 1.5%. That the money that we're talking about forgiven amounts to about 1.5% of total payments. 40 other states do this. These people, for the most part, are desperate. They're just trying to get their bills paid and survive. I don't think there's anything wrong with this policy. If we move forward with this during this pandemic, that's great, but in the long run, we need to think about how we're going to deal with this issue in future years.
Thank you, Senator Deeds. Was there anyone else? I can't remember. Do we have a motion on the floor? It's moved and seconded that House Bill 2040 as amended be adopted.
Madam Chair.
Reported. Yes.
Just speak briefly to the motion.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
And I think what I'm going to do is I want to keep a yellow light on this. I appreciate what Senator Deed said about all the people that contact us about VEC and about the difficulty in getting benefits. But this is not about difficulty in getting benefits. This is about people that were overpaid for their benefits. And I understand that we're in a unique circumstance, and it's not worth, in some cases, taking money away from people that need it for necessities. But these taxes are paid by businesses. This is a trust fund that is self-replenishing, and I understand we're going to shift this to the general fund, and I support that amendment. But we load taxes on businesses all the time, and I'm troubled that people that are perhaps in charge of this system do not have a business background and are not connected with the business community, do not sign paychecks, and yet lecture us about how this system should work. So I'll put a yellow light on this, but I'm just saying that if this is going to lead to a higher tax on small business, that yellow light's going to go to a red.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Senator Deeds.
And I don't have a lot of disagreement with my good friend, the senator from Fairfax City, but I would just want to point out that this bill is about people who received overpayment through no fault of their own. An overwhelmed system made mistakes. And I don't want to blame the agency folks either, but we've lived through a period of time that none of us have lived through in our lifetimes. We haven't seen this before. And the problem is we just have to be prepared to deal with it, and we have to be prepared to help people out.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. The motion is to report House Bill 2040 as amended. All in favor, record your vote.
Ayes 9, no 6, abstentions 1.
Ayes 9, no 6, abstention 1. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is House Bill 1985. Delegate Hurst.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I didn't hear you. 1893 was already disposed of. Just for clarification, the one that is
yes,
very similar to SB 1212 from Senator Edwards. Great, thank you very much. Okay, well then I'll try and be brief and to the point here for House Bill 1985. This would give a presumption of compensability for those frontline healthcare workers that we have called heroes for the last year. It would give them a presumption for workers' compensation if in their job they directly are exposed to COVID-19 patients. There is some funding in the House budget to try and accommodate some additional claims that might be coming, but it's a fairly simple bill, but one that I think has really important implications if we want to show support and throw a lifeline to those frontline workers who have unfortunately contracted a horrible disease and now are not able to work. So, Madam Chair, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the delegate? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1985 be reported. Please record your vote.
I-16, no 0.
I-16, no 0. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is House Bill 1118.
2118.
Delegate Keem.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's House Bill 2118, my electric.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the time, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. This bill, first of all, I do have some line amendments. I wonder if I should offer them now, put in the right
yes,
posture.
Please. Yes.
Sure. Council, Mr. Gartzka has about 5 somewhat minor line amendments, if I can ask.
Okay, Council.
Madam Chair and Delegate Keem, the amendments have to do with adding labor unions and labor standards throughout the bill. And in the last enactment clause, the amendments would add a requirement that project labor agreements be entered into that pay the local prevailing wage rate, participate in registered apprenticeship programs, and then some other requirements.
Okay, is there a motion on the amendments? It's been moved and seconded. The amendments be agreed to. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? They're agreed to. Okay, Delegate Keem.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd be happy to explain how the amendment came in a little bit later. But the genesis of this bill is from a constituent of mine who, like myself and many of you, we had children in schools, and as we're thinking about some of the health impacts of our kids that are on these diesel school buses, we wanted to do something about that. I know there are other measures that have been proposed in this General Assembly last year as well to address that issue. So my bill does it from a slightly different perspective. Rather than focusing just on the school bus, we take on the idea of how do we electrify the transportation sector generally. And the reason why the bill is drafted the way it is this year, and we work with the House Appropriations to make sure that there aren't any state funds involved with this, is we've heard from our friends in Washington, D.C. that they're looking at some infrastructure proposals. There's some economic stimulus ideas that may also try to encourage states and localities to electrify their buses and other light duty vehicles. And so this fund will simply be created with some criteria to be added later through DEQ and others that would say that we could receive funds from federal sources, from other private sources. The funds can then be used as a first priority to fund the conversion of diesel buses to electric, but also other types of machines and others that are carbon producing to the extent that we can incentivize the conversion. And so the bill essentially would create a fund and then set up some criteria to be done through a work group. The language that I offered just now through the line amendments came from some friends in the organized labor who were looking at another bill that's in the General Assembly this year, and they use similar language to track the kinds of work that they want, the work training, the type of apprenticeships, and the kind of labor standards that they ought to have. So they want to be consistent with that language, and so I agree to accept this language in my bill. And that's really what the bill does. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, this is one of the bills we haven't had public comment on yet. So we can hear 2 minutes on each side.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone waiting to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few hands raised, starting with Alexander McCauley.
Morning, Madam Chair. My name is Alexander McCauley. I represent EVgo, which is the country's largest electric vehicle charging network. I think the question that always comes up with proposals like Delegate Keem's is whether the the charging network exists for these vehicles. And I'm here to testify that it does, and we strongly support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Bobby Monticello.
Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Bobby Monticello, co-leader of Mothers Out Front Fairfax. I support HB 2118 because I care about the health of my kids and their future in the face of climate change. Virginia is in a great position to be a leader on this issue since we're home to the second largest school bus fleet in the country here in Fairfax. The science tells us that the time to act is now. School buses are the largest mass transit system in our country, so it makes sense to transition to electric as soon as possible because it can make a significant dent in our greenhouse emissions. It's important to note that there's a growing trend.
Thank you. We're running out of time now for the advocates. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much.
Next.
Next, we have Tiziana Bettino.
Good morning, Madam Chair. As a member of the committee, my name is Tiziana Bottino. I am a community organizer of Mothers Out Front. We fully support HB 2118 because we need to send our kids the message that the adults are doing our job to keep them safe from the threat of climate change and from the harmful effect of pollution. And in Virginia, we have 17,000 school buses that transport 1.5 million kids to school. And some of them ride the buses up to 4 hours a day. And they are exposed 6 times more to polluting to pollutants than kids that don't ride a bus. There is a lot more I can say, but there is no time. So thank you
very much. We're out of time. So anyone else in queue to speak in favor, just say your name and any organization you represent. I'm
Madam
sorry, we
Chair,
don't have much time.
The last speaker is Don Slayman.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. Don Slayman, IBW Local 26. We're in support of this bill. Thank you. It's a great career ladder movement to the rest of the electrical trade. And our trainings are paid for by our members and no cost to the state or to the participants.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone signed up in opposition?
Madam Chair, I see no hands raised.
Okay, good. In that case, is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2118 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 11, noes 5.
Ayes 11, noes 5. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is Delegate Kilgore, House Bill 1925.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
I'm a chair.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Hey, House Bill 1925 is the Brownfields and Coal Mine Reclamation bill, basically setting up a program. We're not asking for any state money. We believe that in working with the advocates, there and had some meetings with EPA. There's some EPA federal monies available for these reclamation type projects to go in and do brownfields, and this also would help reduce the strain on our farmlands, where folks are, trying to put these renewable energy projects on farmlands and eating up our farmlands that we need. So I think basically, what I'm telling the committee is we're not asking for any money, state money. We're going to be looking for federal dollars through EPA and those top revenue sources.
Are there any questions for Delegate Kilgore? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 1925 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0, and I get that federal money, Delegate.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks. Next is House Joint Resolution 542, Delegate McQuinn.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the committee for their attention to House HJ 542. This bill would direct the Department of Rail and Public Transportation to study methods and ways we can modernize our transportation system. Not only will it cover things like the environmental and health impact, but it would also look at improving accessibility and affordability in a cleaner, a safer, and more economic way of developing an efficient transit system that benefits everyone. And so I hope it would be the will of the committee to look favorable upon this. And I will entertain any questions at this time. We also have Director Mitchell that's probably in the waiting room for other questions as it relates to this House HJ 542. There is a $500,000 line item in the House budget for this, and they are willing to, DRPT said that they can defer any additional costs that will come as a result of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions for Delegate McQuinn?
Madam Chair.
I hear somebody, but
Peterson.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, and I want to thank Delegate Quinn. We did hear this, I think, in rules. I have the largest transit stop in the state in my district, the Vienna Metro Station. Gets about 10,000 people a day. And so the one thing I would say is, and I realize equity is kind of the word of the session, but reliability is what really counts. And if you want to have a transit system that works, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be on time. And that is the absolute most important thing, Delegate, no matter what your background is, that's all I would commend to you. And I do think we need to study transit. Let's face it, our transit numbers have plummeted, at least in Northern Virginia, because of the pandemic, as people stopped going to work and our metro ridership has disappeared. We need to bring it back. It's a critical part of our infrastructure. And so I think this is a very timely study. I would just, again, I know reliability is not as sexy a word right now, but that to me is what the key is. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other members?
Madam
Delegate
Chair.
Deeds. Senator Deeds.
I just noticed a $500,000 general fund in this study. Do you think this bill requires a cause?
I was going to point out that JLARC is currently doing a transportation study that is broader than this request, but they are in the scoping stage of what they will cover. So according to JLARC, they could incorporate this into the study that's already being done and is already funded.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Hanger.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate then to amend this to direct the study to be through JLARC as opposed to this standalone study?
It would save us a lot of money on the bottom line.
I would offer that amendment.
It's been moved and seconded that we ask JLARC to incorporate this into their study on transportation.
Madam Chair.
McQuinn?
Yeah, Madam Chair, before you move forward with it, again, the Departments of Rail and Public Transportation thought that they were in a position to do this. The only other question is that I wanted to know if there were many stakeholders who were at the table. Are they, and if JLARC takes this responsibility on, will they have the opportunity to also participate in this?
That is JLARC's tradition. We could make it explicit that they do if that would.
Please, that would be very helpful. I just want to make, there were a group of individuals that have worked probably over a year trying to get us to this point and helping us to come to a place where we can address this particular issue. So I just want to make sure that they are able to participate in the process. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator McClellan.
I move that we make it explicit that JLARC work with the Department of Rail and Public Transportation.
Okay. That would be an amendment. Okay, it's been seconded that that be made explicit in the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Now, are we ready for a motion on the bill? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Record your vote.
That's a joint. Is that a recorded vote?
This is to report.
What was it? A
Report
resolution?
is amended.
It's a resolution.
Oh, sorry. It's a resolution. Do we need to have recorded vote? We do have a recorded vote. It's 16. 16-0. So it's reported and recorded.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to offer a motion to reconsider House Bill 2118, the vote by which we reported that bill.
There's a motion that we reconsider the vote by which we reported House Bill 2118. All in favor of reconsidering, record your vote.
Which one is that? Sorry, did you say 2118?
2118.
2118.
Got it. Let's see that. Hang on. I'm getting there, sorry. Madam Chair, which bill was House Bill? Oh, I see up there. Never mind.
Yeah.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. We will reconsider that vote.
Madam Chair, what I'd now like to do, we do have a member of this committee who's been working assiduously on these types of issues related to school buses, et cetera, for a couple of years now, and has a bill that passed through the Senate earlier in the session. What I'd like to do is propose that House Bill 2118 be conformed to Senator Lucas's bill.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2118 be conformed to Senator Lucas's similar bill. 1380.
Yes.
Is
1380, yeah.
Delegate Keem on the line still? Is it very different from his, Senator Lucas or Senator Barker?
There are a few differences, but I'm having some difficulty. I think he may lose a few of his provisions if we conform these two bills, but I see this as the only way that I'm going to be able to get my bill out of the House.
Okay. So the motion in front of us is to conform House Bill 2118 to Senate Bill 1380. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, noes 2.
Ayes 14, noes 2. Now, is there a motion to report the bill?
So move.
Yes, yes.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
just parliamentary inquiry? I
It's like
I was reading that, and it's not what was coming. Did we vote before on conforming? And if so, I want to be a big yes.
That was for conforming. My apologies for putting it up on the board. That was.
So, Madam Chair, I'm a yes on conforming. I apologize.
Okay, so now the motion is to report House Bill 2118 as conformed.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Ayes 12, noes 4. The bill is reported. Okay, next is Delegate Moorfield, House Bill 2293.
Madam Chair.
I hear my voice, my name, but who's calling?
This is Senator Marsden.
Okay, Senator Marsden.
Delegate Moorfield called me. He had a previous engagement. All this does is extends the sunset date from January the 1st, 2022 to January the 1st, 2024 on the local gas severance tax. This is used to in the local coal and gas road improvement fund, and it allows them to continue to invest in local projects. And if there are no questions, I would just move to report that bill.
Okay, this bill has not had a public hearing, but it's in absolutely no trouble as far as I can tell. Is there anyone signed up to speak?
Madam Chair, we have one hand raised. Tiziana Bettino is being moved back into the room. Ms. Bettino, please unmute and go ahead whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry, there was a hand raised for confirming the bill part. I didn't know if I could speak on that, but
okay,
probably too late.
Okay, we are now on Delegate Moorfield's bill 2293.
No, yeah.
I heard a motion to report, but I have, and now a second. All in favor of reporting, record your vote aye or nay.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0. The bill is reported. Next is Delegate Murphy's bill, House Bill 1995.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1995 establishes a Rare Disease Advisory Council in the executive branch to advise the General Assembly and other government agencies on the needs of Virginians with rare diseases. The funding for this, we added and established a rare disease council fund, and it will also receive funds from private fundraising and from donors. So I've been asked to put this bill in by parents of kids with rare diseases because there's so many things that they have to deal with, and the health challenges that they face are really enormous. So I ask that you pass the bill.
Okay, are there questions?
Or report the bill.
Are there questions? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the House Bill 1995 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0, abstentions
Ayes
1.
15, noes 0, abstention 1. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. My abstention was meant to be a yes vote. That was a mistake, sorry.
You correct that, please?
Your vote is noted.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Delegate Plum, House Bill 2212.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and my senator.
Yes, and my delegate.
Thank you. Haven't seen you in a long time. House Bill 2212 is a result of the JLARC study looking at the Children's Services Act. It recommends that the director of the Office for Children be given a role of monitoring local performance and using audited performance standards to provide technical assistance to local programs and working with local programs that are consistent with performing. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, what we found in the JLARC report was that a lot of amazing things are happening under the Children's Services Act with some of our most vulnerable young people. However, it depends sometimes on your zip code as to the level of services that you get. What this would do would be to set up a system where we take a look statewide at what's going on and be able to provide better technical assistance to local programs to make sure that all the children of the Commonwealth are appropriately served. Be happy to respond to your questions if you have any.
Are there any questions for Delegate Plum? Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2212 be reported. Please record your vote.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero, the bill's reported.
Thank
We are getting concerned that we may not be able to complete the whole docket today. Hopefully we will, but I'm going to pull up the revenue bills because we need to be hearing them. So we're going to start going out of order. The first revenue bill is Delegate Sickles, House Bill 2332. Delegate Sickles, are you here? I know we've gone out of order now.
Madam Chair, he is not in the panel, but I will send him another reminder.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I could present the bill.
Okay,
To a certain
good.
extent- To a certain extent here, may not. This is a bill Delegate Sickles has had this year to establish a reinsurance program. What it would do, it would, in an essence, have funding that would allow the coverage of some of the expenses of those people who are in the health exchange in the individual program, individual coverage situation. Basically would be able to reduce the premiums that those individuals would have to pay by somewhere between 10 and 15, 20% of the cost of the program. We actually, the way the bill is structured right now, there's a little bit of administrative cost, but most of it would be roughly a minimum of $40 million per year that we would be paying in from general funds. But we would be receiving more than $200 million per year from the federal government because this would have a substantial impact on the amount of tax benefits that they provide as a result of that program. So that's basically what this is, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Are there any questions for Senator Barker?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Hanger.
Thank you. I know at the federal level this has been somewhat of a moving target, and I'm glad the committee changed it away from a tax on insurance to general fund. But do we, since some of the activity at the federal level is uncertain, do we need a clause on this so that it can be worked out in conference?
I don't think that it needs a clause. I don't think we're in that particular situation. But I think we're in a much stronger position now that we have the bill structured to come from general funds rather than through a tax on certain health insurance plans, but not others.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Hanger.
Question. I'd ask Senator Barker, you mentioned $30 million. Is that locked in stone, or is the bill written so that that's maneuverable?
That's maneuverable, and basically I think right now there are about 14 states that have moved in this direction already, 14 or 15 states who are already in process of implementing, and some of them already have them in place. But basically, you're looking at essentially between a 10 and 20% reduction in premiums to get a benefit and get more people to participate in there. With that, the $40 million would be the low end of that, but we could go higher as well. So,
Madam Chair.
I would note that Delegate Sickles, I hear, is on the line now. Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, just I guess a question to Senator Barker. I know that in the notes that it talks about the fact that it won't begin until 2023. Do you anticipate that we will get an opportunity to see the waiver and review the actual program before it goes into effect, or is it going to kind of go through this process and go into effect without kind of us having the last look at this, sir?
Well, I don't know that it's written into the bill that it would have to come back through us for approval, but certainly we would be able to access and get copies of the waiver that would be requested there. So all of those types of things would be publicly available. So.
Thank you,
And we
Madam
could
Chair.
certainly look at it.
Are there further
With this
questions?
committee, the Commerce and Labor Committee, or the HHR Oversight Committee. So.
Are there further questions? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2332 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, noes 2.
Ayes 14, noes 2. The bill is reported. The next revenue bill I see is, where is it? House Bill 2307. Delegate Hayes' bill. It's on our supplemental calendar.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this was one of the bills that was similar to Senate bills that you were going to have me read the title and description. Delegate Hayes' bill, House Bill 2307, is the Consumer Data Protection Act that establishes a framework for controlling and processing personal data. You'll see notes related to the impact, but mostly future go forward. But the House budget did include $330,556 general fund and 3 positions. It is similar to Senate Bill 1392, Senator Marsden's bill, which passed the Senate 36 yes, 0 no, with 1 abstention. And the substitute that was adopted in general laws included some technical amendments, and those are the main difference, but essentially some clarifying language.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator
Yesterday,
Barker.
in general laws, we amended the bill to make it conform to the way Senator Marsden's bill is now in the House.
Okay.
There have been changes to Senator Marsden's bill since it went over to the House, but this would make the 2 bills identical in terms of where they are in the process.
Senator Peterson, you have a question?
I do have a question, and maybe Marsden's the best one, Senator Marsden's the best one to answer this. Violations of this act will be solely prosecuted by the Attorney General's office, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, further question?
Senator Peterson.
So I guess my question is, typically under Virginia Consumer Protection Act, Title VII, I mean, pretty much every civil rights act of any importance that we have, there's a private cause of action. And I guess my question is, why do we not have a private cause of action under this act?
Well, the simplest answer is we wouldn't have a bill.
Okay.
I
like candor. Okay.
The issue here is, Senator Peterson, if at some time in the future the enforcement strategies that we've put in place here through this bill are not sufficient and are not working, there's certainly an opportunity to repair that. But this is based on some work that took place in the state of Washington. It is, I think, the way to go. It enables people who don't have access to attorneys and don't have the ability to do that to be represented by the Attorney General's office, and I think it is a way forward that will treat everybody the same, and it will be self-sustaining ultimately for the Attorney General's office in terms of they will support their efforts through the fines and fees that they will charge violators of this act.
Okay.
Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, this bill really wasn't on my radar screen until this morning. I got an email overnight from a lady that's the head of the Citizens Consumer Council, and she indicates to me that this type of legislation has only been enacted in one state, California, and it doesn't take effect there until 2023. She says no consumers were involved at any point in the development of this legislation, and I'd just like Senator Marsden to perhaps address some of those concerns.
Thank you, Senator Deeds. I think in one of my Zoom calls, I sent out an email to some 200 and however many people. There was very, very slow response initially. Then we got a flood of changes. But what the administration has done here is that they offered to, and it's been an amendment that's been adopted into the bill that deals with a stakeholder group that is going to be meeting between now and 2022 to make any changes we have, to give open access to anyone who wants to step forward and express any concerns that they have with this bill. It is getting rave reviews around the country from consumer groups. It's a big, big step forward, and but it doesn't take place also until January of 23. So we have time to work on some additional concerns that we have, but we've addressed as many as we can, and trust me, we have heard from a lot of people, and we have made adjustments, and we will continue to do that as needed through the governor's stakeholder group.
Madam Chair, just to follow up to that.
Yes, Senator
If I
Deeds.
can. Senator Marsden, I would ask you, if it's receiving rave reviews from consumer groups around the country, this woman says she's the head of the Virginia Citizens Consumer Council. Why is she so down on it if everybody else in the country?
I didn't say it was getting rave reviews from from a lot of folks, but I had an interview the other day with Consumer Reports who were very enthusiastic about the bill.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Evan.
Very briefly on this bill, is there still an enactment clause in that work group, and maybe Senator Marsden can answer this for me, would they be able to delete, to address the right to delete language? I have a large business in my district that was concerned with that, so that'll...
1444. I want to offer a floor amendment to strike...
Yes. That's the videotape.
Senator Evan, while the bill has a delayed enactment until January of 23, the whole purpose of this work group is to make additions, deletions, hear from other interested folks. This couldn't be done any more responsibly than it's being done right now. I recognize this is important stuff, but it's been covered by every major group in the country. It's been in the Wall Street Journal, and unfortunately, a lot of people, don't keep track of what's going on here like they perhaps ought to. But we've given them this certainly second opportunity to express their concerns, and we can make the necessary changes. And we appreciate the administration stepping up to help guide this group. And I'll be on this group, as will Delegate Hayes, who is head of JCOTS. And we're serious about getting this right.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Is there anyone else who desires to speak? Is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2307 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 12, noes 3, abstentions 1.
Ayes 12, noes 3, abstention 1. The bill's reported. The next revenue bill is House Bill 2330, Delegate Corey, and I understand Senator Marsden's going to discuss this one.
Madam Chair, I'm told that Delegate Corey is going to be presenting. If she's not there, I would...
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's here. Delegate Corey is here.
Oh, good.
And thank you. Thank you
Okay,
for offering.
Delegate Corey.
I appreciate Senator Marsden's offer. This bill, you have not heard this bill before, so I will give an extremely brief overview of the bill. There have been, by the way, a number of amendments, and there was also a substitute from the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm not sure, but I think I need to move the substitute from the Senate Committee and the amendments that I am requesting today. Is that right?
Madam Chair, I believe the substitute she's referring to was adopted in the other committee, but if she has additional amendments, she would need to do that, and I do believe there are perhaps some alternative amendments as well.
Okay. I'm not sure you could hear Delegate Corey, but the substitute has already been adopted in another committee. But what's before us, you may want to amend or have somebody amend here.
Yes, there were some late night amendments and then confusion and then recent straightening it out. So hopefully what is before you is the most recent within the past hour version of the amendments. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd like to check with your clerk.
Let's check with Legislative Services.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question to try?
Yes, you may.
My question is either in the format of the bill that appears before us or the amendments that you have, which were designed to work towards a consensus, does it include the amendments that were agreed to by Dominion, APCO, and the Department of Social Services that would reach a consensus on this bill?
Well, Madam Chair, may I respond, please?
Yes.
Senator Norman. I'm assuming that everybody understands this bill, so we'll go straight to answering Senator Norman's question. The amendments that I'm introducing today reflect an agreement between the Department of Social Services, the Department of Housing and Community Development, Dominion, APCO, and a number of environmental groups. However, Senator Norman, they are not word for word what you may have seen last night. They take the essence of that, and you will see the amendments, I hope. As recently as within the hour, I have been speaking with Dominion about the misunderstanding that I was going to suggest word for word amendments, and Dominion assures me that they are fine with it and they will make sure that the other energy companies are okay. And if I neglected to say I've been working with the SEC, I want to be sure that I do say that. And I also know that there are some people who are experts in each one of these fields. I understand, Madam Chair, that this is getting very confusing, but so I hope, Senator Norman, that answers your question.
Well, let's ask Connor to address the amendments.
I thank the lady.
Madam Chair and Delegate Corey, so Delegate Corey's amendments, the ones that are posted to LIS right now, there are 4 of them, and I am somewhat familiar with the discussion around that there were some possible late changes that were going to be made that Delegate Corey did not intend to offer. So what you see posted on LIS are 4 amendments, and those represent the ones that Delegate Corey had asked for. And I could try to, I'm happy to talk about the possible other ones that were being considered, but I think it's probably up to Delegate Corey to sort of.
Yes. Madam Chair, I would like to, thank you. I would like to comment that the most recent amendments changed the percentage of poverty threshold from 200 to 150, which I know was extremely important to APCO. And all of the players have agreed to that. We also have changed the threshold of expenses to APCO from 20 million to 25. And that was also extremely important to them. There have been suggestions of a complicated review system with an MOU between DSS and stakeholders. And frankly, since this bill has gotten so convoluted, I decided not to add any further language since there already is stakeholder review built in and DSS agreeing and working with the SEC and the Department of Housing and Community Development and the energy companies.
Madam Chair.
Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, first, I think the amendments do help. I guess I have a very fundamental question about the amendments. After it's all said and done, I know the state's got to pay some money in non-general fund, but who's going to pay the cost of these expenses? Are they going to, under the amendments, be borne by the power companies, or are they going to be redistributed back to middle-class consumers?
Madam Chair, may I respond to Senator Newman? Thank you. The amendments do not change who is paying for this program. It is the same as it was when this program was passed by both houses last year as part of the Virginia Clean Economy Act. The amendments simply clarify a cap on the expenses of the program per se. There is, as you may recall, last year we all voted to create a universal service fee that would be applicable to every ratepayer. And that was part of what we directed the SEC to work on. The SEC was directed through the Virginia Clean Economy Act to come up with guidelines and specific operating procedures for the percentage of income payment plan. However, in December, they decided that they needed more direction from the General Assembly, and that is what this is intended to do. So none of the amendments change where the cost is coming from. And I need to add that in the governor's budget, there is money for the administrative costs that will be borne by DSS. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm still hopeful we will finish the docket today. It's a dwindling hope.
Madam Chair?
But if we could move on.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Peterson.
First of all, this is a very complex subject, and I think it probably deserves a couple hours just to know what the substance is. You know, we've already passed legislation over the summer about utility cutoffs, and we had a lot of time we spent on that. I support what Delegate Corey's trying to do, but you need to get the details right, and we're just not going to have time to get it right at this session and maybe during the session. So I would move that we add a reenactment clause to this bill.
There's a motion to add a reenactment clause. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of adding a reenactment clause, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Okay, that's one opposed. So we will add a reenactment clause. Is there a motion on the bill?
Madam Chair, did we adopt the previous amendments? I apologize. Did you adopt the amendments? No? Did you want to adopt the amendments that were worked out with Dominion and SEC and others?
Madam Chair.
Senator McClellan.
If we are going to adopt those, I know that not all of the stakeholders agree with them, and I think there are some folks that would want to provide testimony on that if we are going to consider them.
Okay, so let's not adopt those amendments and let that be worked out over the next year. Okay, is there a motion to report as amended? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2330 be reported as amended. Please record your vote. I don't have the...
Senator Norman, how do you vote? Oh, I closed the vote, excuse me. Yes, sir. Senator Edwards, how do you vote? Aye. Your vote is noted, sir. Ayes 11, noes 3, abstentions 2, or 1, excuse me, 2.
Okay, ayes 11, noes 3, abstentions 2. The bill is reported. Now,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Members of the committee.
We also have House Bill 1833, which is also a revenue bill. Delegate Subramanian. Is he on?
Madam Chair, he is in the Zoom room.
What, did you say he is in the Zoom room?
He is there, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Delegate, we're about to do your bill 1833. April?
Madam Chair, House Bill 1833, Delegate Subrin's bill, has to do with the leasing of land under the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The bill removes the power of the General Assembly to approve the lease of certain lands controlled by the department. Currently, the lease and conveyance of certain lands by the department is subject to the consent and approval of the governor and the General Assembly. The new process in this bill would require the written recommendation of the Department of General Services to the governor and the written approval of the governor. Depending on the terms of the future contract, there is a potential for future lease revenue resulting from that.
The reason I was hoping the delegate would be on is I'm perplexed as to what the problem is that he's trying to solve.
Madam Chair, I'm here.
Oh, you're
I
here.
apologize.
Good. Could
Yes,
you
we were in
answer that
caucus.
question?
Yes, Madam Chair. The problem we're trying to solve right now is for leases such as agricultural leases or other types of leases that the department does, they have to get approval of that from the General Assembly. That unfortunately has led to several issues with being able to do leases in the first place with many folks who would like to. And so it's hindered the department's ability to pursue this very important revenue source. So the idea would be to streamline that process by allowing the Department of General Services to approve them and sign off, and then the governor sign off, and they would still report to the General Assembly on those leases every year. So if there were issues that were to come up, we can take a look. But the idea is to streamline the process of leasing, and I think this will lead to net revenue gain by allowing better leases and the ability to negotiate leases and approve them quickly.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Senator Norman.
Madam Chair, I have some reticence about eliminating the General Assembly's legislative involvement in it, and I don't say this as criticizing any specific governor, but abdicating part of the legislative responsibility exclusively to the executive branch, which includes general services, I just don't think is a good approach. I appreciate what the delegate is doing, but that's just my position.
Perhaps because I am chairing the committee and would be one of the ones eliminated from notification, I do tend to agree with you that I don't see why the legislature would give up its say in this.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator.
Is this an administration bill?
Is this an administration bill?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is coming from the administration. The department and the administration asked me to put it in because they've found this to be a big issue.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
I apologize. I was dozing here in the back. This went through our committee yesterday. I did take a look at this. I think this only deals with leases. So again, you're not talking about a conveyance of state property. Now, if we wanted to limit it to leases over 10 years or fewer, but it is just trying to cut down on the bureaucracy involved in just trying to administer at least properties in the DC. I believe it's limited to DCR. So I thought it was a good bill, but there it is.
Okay, well, now you've clarified. I don't feel like I'm losing
I apologize,
a whole
Madam
lot of
Chair.
power.
I was checking my stock portfolio.
Madam
back here.
Chair, I'm just trying to figure out what we're talking about here. We're talking about leasing the, say, agricultural land for hay baling, leasing it to farmers, or what exactly are we talking about?
Delegate?
Yes, Madam Chair. That's one example, and this is pretty limited to specific purposes like that. Again, this is the the senator from Fairfax is correct, and this is just certain types of leases, nothing more.
Okay. Is there further discussion on this bill?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Hanger.
Thank you. Yeah, as the chair of Ag was talking there, we'd vetted this quite a bit yesterday. It was misunderstood, but I think it is applying to just leases. Gives some more flexibility. It does require the governor's signature, so I move that we report the bill.
It's been moved and seconded. House Bill 1833 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Ayes 12, noes 4. The bill's reported. Let me check with April. Does that complete all of the revenue bills?
Madam Chair, those are the ones I had on my list. Yes.
That does
completed the
complete
revenue bills. Yes.
Okay. Then shall we go back to House Bill 2058, Delegate Simon's bill? I am going to try and get us through the whole thing in the next half hour, but if we don't, we're going to have to.
We can do it, Madam Chair.
Have to meet again. Okay, Delegate Simon.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair. HB 2058 codifies the STEM Education Advisory Board that Governor Northam created through executive order. The commission he created to do this work expired in September 2020, and their work is important to align STEM education and make equitable opportunities available for all students across the Commonwealth. The cost of this board can be absorbed in the Secretary of Education's budget. Deputy Secretary of Education Kathy Bircher is here to speak to that if necessary, and I'm happy to take any questions.
It already has. Thank you. I see that the administration can absorb the costs, so there is no fiscal impact. Is there any motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill's reported. Thank you, Delegate. You have
Thank you.
another
I have
one.
bill.
You have
Yes.
2321.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This bill establishes a new governor's cabinet position of formerly known as Secretary of Labor, although there was a name change made in committee. The bill eliminates the position of Chief Workforce Advisor and transfers the responsibility to the new Secretary of Labor. Item 52 in the budget bill includes $599,000 from the general fund in each year for the office of the Chief Workforce Advisor. The funding includes the position Chief Workforce Advisor, an Assistant Advisor, an Executive Assistant. Currently, the office receives additional support from a staff position in the governor's office. There appears to be a fiscal impact of $101,956, and that additional funding would provide support for staff with expertise in occupational safety. And we do have Chief Workforce Advisor, Dr. Megan Healy here, who can speak to this bill as well.
Questions on this bill?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Hanger.
I don't support this bill, but I don't think a prolonged conversation will change anybody's mind on this.
Okay, is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2321 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Ayes 12, noes 3. The bill's reported. I have been told by April that we are expecting more bills to come from other committees, so regardless, we will have to meet tomorrow. Next is House Bill 2120. Delegate Wampler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two bills in front of Senate Finance this morning. Did you want 2101 first, Madam Chair?
2101.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, House Bill 2101 is a bill that repeals the sunset provision that was put on to a piece of legislation that I had in front of Senate Finance last year. The underlying bill allows for the match of Tobacco Commission grant awards with any grant award offered by the Go Virginia board. And so with that, Madam Chairman, I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Delegate, I remember last year when we agreed to do this, you said it would be for 1 year only.
Madam Chair, members, the bill, I intended originally for this to be a permanent fixture of Virginia law and would hope that that would be the case coming out of the Senate Finance this year. Out of the Senate Finance Committee this year, the Go Virginia board took up this issue at its summer meeting in June and adopted a board policy to reflect the law. And so the economic development entities of the Tobacco Commission and the Go Virginia board have worked through this and provided a board policy for it. And we're starting to see projects move towards fruition with this capability. And so we would hope it will become a permanent fixture of the code.
Well, I'm on the Go Virginia board, and
yes, ma'am.
This is not what we, in our original policy, set out to do. So I'm not.
Madam Chair?
Senator Evan.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was a 1 year fix originally. I'm just wondering if it's been used as matching funds as of yet, tobacco fund as matching funds for Go Virginia grants.
Madam Chair, I'll answer if I can.
Yes.
Madam Chair and Senator Evan, the Tobacco Commission and the Go Virginia Board meet at different schedules. So it's a biannual meeting and award schedule for the Tobacco Commission, and it is quarterly for the Go Virginia State Board. And so at this point, there's only been one project in the last year to take place. But of course, as you're all aware, there have been some other priorities top of mind, coronavirus. The Go Virginia Board was also doing an economic resiliency program to help out every region. And so I think they've had a focus there. We have heard from regions 1 and 2 of the Go Virginia regions, as well as 3, so Southwest, Southside, and the New River Valley, saying that they are anticipating more projects to be funded with this mechanism of both allowing Tobacco Commission and Go Virginia grants to be matched together. And so we would hope that in the near future, as we all face economic issues in each part of our constituencies, that this would be a tool available. Both of these entities are set up to do the same thing, and we think that it makes perfect sense to maximize their potential for shared economic development interests.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Senator Newman.
With your permission, I would like to propose an amendment that we extend the sunset by 1 year, allowing the current projects to kind of flow through, and the committee can consider it next year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the sunset be extended by 1 year. All in favor of that amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Amendment passes. It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2101 be reported as amended. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, noes 0. The bill as amended is reported. I'm told that we skipped a bill. April, which one was it?
Madam Chair, I believe Delegate Wampler has one more bill if you wanted to finish his and then go
Okay,
back.
let's do Delegate Wampler's other bill, 2252.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I have House Bill 2252 before you, which is a bill that my office is carrying on behalf of Senator Chafin's office as we work to help his office tie off a few legislative issues. It relates to a piece of land in Tazewell County, 13.6 acres of land, which was held by the Department of Wildlife Resources. The bill authorizes a quick claim deed and release to a group of private citizens in Tazewell County so that they can have ingress and egress to their land. It passed the Senate floor 39-0. Senator Pillion carried its cognate, and so I'm not sure why it was in a posture where it wasn't an identical bill. But we would hope that the committee would report it favorably and vote on it again in the Senate floor. Thank you.
Yeah, Delegate Wampler, I agree with you. I'm not quite sure why it's here because it has no fiscal impact. So is there a motion?
It was, Madam Chair,
it
was identical to the House Senate bill?
Yes, isn't it identical?
I don't know that it's identical, but it's very similar. I believe Jason's on the phone if he wants to speak to that, but
If it's not identical, do we need to conform it? That's the question.
I do not believe so, but again, if Jason would like to comment, he
Madam
can.
Chair, April, I believe it is identical. Connor, I don't have the bill compare open, but I believe that it's an identical bill.
Okay, thank you.
It's been moved and seconded that House Bill 2252 be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, noes 10. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The bill that I inadvertently skipped, and I apologize to Delegate Sickles, is House Bill 1884.
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I am here.
Thank
If
you, and I
wanted me to
apologize.
explain the
I'm
bill.
really sorry. Too many papers.
Not a problem. This bill, Madam Chairman, is an administration bill. Last year, we created the Virginia Health Benefit Exchange to replace healthcare.gov. That's a process that takes place over a couple years. This bill simply allows the tax department to have a checkoff box for people to check off so that social workers and others can find out and contact them to see if there are healthcare insurance options for them that are out there. As you know, the federal government deeply subsidizes health insurance for individuals above 138% of poverty and below 400% of poverty level. And we want to make sure every Virginian knows that those options are out there. Also, if you're a lower income worker, you can easily bounce back and forth between Medicaid, which 1.7 million Virginians have at below 138% of poverty, and then above that where you need to buy insurance on the exchange. And so this provision would help facilitate that and to make sure that the best we can, that people are taking advantage of the opportunities before them to have affordable healthcare insurance. That's what the bill does.
Okay, are there questions for Delegate Sickles?
Madam Chair,
Senator Eben.
if no one has any questions, I'd move to report.
It's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Ayes 13, noes 1. The bill is reported. Thank you, Delegate, and I apologize again.
No problem. Appreciate it. See you soon.
Let me check with April. I believe we have completed our regular docket.
Madam Chair, I had that we still had two bills, House Bill 1979, Delegate Reed's bill that got moved from yesterday at his request, and then House Bill 2271, Delegate Samira's bill. I still have that we have those two on the regular docket. I'll ask the clerk to confirm that, but yes.
That is correct.
And unfortunately, you were muffled and I didn't get the numbers.
I'm sorry, the first one is House Bill 1979, Delegate Reed's bill, which had been asked to go by for the day yesterday. I'm not sure if it's ready for today or if it should go for tomorrow, but
Okay, Delegate Reed, are you with us?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Okay, would you like to do House Bill 1979?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe that there should be a substitute before the committee that is addressing 4 technical amendments, which I can speak to.
Move substitute.
It's been moved that the technical amendments be agreed to. Is there a second? And seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? They're adopted.
Thank you,
Reed.
thank you, Madam Chair. The technical amendments that we worked on with all of the stakeholders over the last day, the additional day that you gave us, actually goes through and better provides a definition of what the base price would be for a new vehicle. It makes reference to a part of the code that already defines what a used vehicle selling price would be. There were some dates that were out of sync with the piece of legislation that came over from the House because of just a lot of last minute amendments. And then there's one other technical amendment which basically removes the restriction on a used vehicle over 7 years old being able to apply for and receive the rebate. That was taken off. Again, this was through a lot of discussions with VADA, Volkswagen, and many of the other stakeholder groups. So those are the amendments, Madam Chair. The bill as it is before you right now, what it does is it provides an EV rebate. And I want to stress, this is a rebate that is given at the time of sale. This is not a tax credit that is going to only wealthy individuals. It is $2,500 for the average consumer. And then there's an additional $2,000 that is an enhanced rebate that is given to individuals who are at 300% of the federal poverty level. The reason for that is that we are really trying to make an effort to get the rebate to the hands of the general consumer within the state of Virginia, so that if you take an example, like if you were to get a used Nissan Leaf for $20,000 and you were in that 300% of the federal poverty guidelines now, you could potentially get $4,500 off, which really puts an electric vehicle within your price point. So this is part of the 3 bills that we've been working on. One is the Clean Cars, which addresses supply. This addresses demand. And there's Delegate Sullivan's bill, which addresses infrastructure. So Madam Chair, committee members, that's what the bill does.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Delegate Reed, at one point, it was my understanding this was looked at as a pilot project to see if this rebate actually hit the target population, if it helped people that couldn't otherwise afford an electric vehicle buy one. Is that not the posture it's in right now?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, Senator Deeds, that's a very good point, and you are correct. The bill as it is before you now has a 5-year duration. The House has included a budget amount of $5 million, which some portion of that would be used to set up the program, and then the rest would be used to actually do the pilot of this. Also, there is an advisory council that is empowered to be able to look at the success of what the actual intent is in the legislation, and that advisory council will include members from the Senate and the House to make sure that it is carrying through on our legislative intent.
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
I mean, I thought it was the pilot project, and the House, it says the House budget includes $5 million, but the fiscal impact for this bill in both fiscal year 22 and 23 is substantially more than $5 million. And I just wondered how we were addressing that.
Madam Chair, if I may speak to that?
Yes.
Yes. So again, you're correct, correct, Senator Deeds. In the work group that was done over the summer, it was identified that this potentially could have an impact of $40 million, and then the 1 year would be $20 million. But the only amount that the House has put into it is $5 million. So it has a finite amount of money that would be made available to it. And so the fiscal impact would only be what it is that we allocate to it. And I will also add, Senator Deeds, that Chair Torian has insisted that I not come back for more money from the general fund for this. And so therefore, we will hopefully be looking at either federal money coming into this program or some other source of revenue that was identified by DMME over the summer work group.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would just ask staff, is this language tight enough to limit our liability to $5 million?
Madam Chair, this is Connor Garska from DLS. And Senator Deeds, to answer your question, if you look at section 67-1802 of the bill, subsection D is the limitation that restricts it to only what's in the fund is the limit on what rebates are available. So only the amount appropriated can be used for rebates.
Senator Barker.
I mean, we got real issues here, I think, as it relates to sort of how we're going to finance it and fund these types of things. Is it a pilot? Is it something that we're going to have in place, we expect to have in place for a long period of time, and which would have, you know, if it were open-ended, would certainly have significant things. What I'd like to do is make a motion now to put a reenactment clause on it. And if everything can be worked out, you know, during conference committee so that everybody's satisfied, then, you know, that obviously could come out at that point. But I think we need to make sure we have a clear understanding of exactly what everybody's expectations are on this before we move forward with it.
Madam Chair, I'd second that motion, but I think April was trying to address my question.
Oh,
okay.
April.
Madam Chair, Senator Deeds, I think the concern that staff had is how you would implement that, because the dealer was required to take it out of the sales and use tax, which also wasn't accounted for in the fiscal impact that you mentioned. So I think the concern was just how you would do that on the implementation. If you only had $5 million, how you would implement the program, given
Madam Chair,
maybe the dealer wouldn't know.
I think that speaks to the need for a reenactment clause and to get this bill in conference.
Okay. There's a motion and a second that we have we add a reenactment clause. All in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're putting on a reenactment clause. Is there a motion on the bill?
Report as amended.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be House Bill 1979 be reported as amended. Please record your vote.
Senator Barker.
I didn't see it. I got to take care of it.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4, the bill's reported. I think we have one more that I'd skipped, House Bill 2271.
Correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you,
Delegate Samir. And I apologize.
morning,
I guess
Madam
you
Chair.
weren't here when I went through it.
Oh, you're just fine. Good morning to you. You guys are doing wonderful. Before you is House Bill 2271. It's an independent study of the cost of all universal health care options that remain for us to consider for federal administrative waivers. Of course, after successfully bringing thousands of new Virginians into the Medicaid program, expanding public health insurance to cover every other Virginian that's not covered is the next step toward ensuring affordable health care in the Commonwealth is available to all. Publicly financed systems are proven to serve populations with highly affordable health care coverage for all. While some approaches preserve a role for duplicative private services, other approaches make the Commonwealth the only servicer. This bill would examine these differences and their financing implications by directing the Joint Commission on Healthcare to contract an independent study of the two financing options, the private and the public, to get us to that affordable quality coverage for all Virginians. It would put to bed the misguided response to proposed plans surrounding universal health care. How are we going to pay for it? Worth noting that it is going to the Joint Commission on Healthcare, and it's chief co-patroned by the current chair of the Joint Commission on Healthcare, Delegate Patrick Hope. And I'm open to all your questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there questions for Delegate Samira? Are there any comments? Senator Peterson.
Yeah, I've talked with the delegate before. I think this is a good idea. Whether or not your position on universal health care, we did do Medicaid expansion. We still have people that are uninsured. And I think at a minimum, if we're going to have a Joint Commission on Health Care looking to pick up the remaining people in our society that don't have health insurance and looking at options for their care, whether it's a universal plan or the current system we have, I think that's a worthwhile goal. So I support this legislation.
Madam Chair, if that's a motion, I'll second it.
It was not a motion.
I'll make a motion then to
Yeah,
report.
well, I still have people wanting to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Senator Barker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that I understand exactly where, I think I understand where Senator Peterson's coming from, that we need to sort of figure out sort of what are the issues that individuals face and what are a variety of different potential programs that would help us be able to address those. But I think to do that, rather than trying to do an extraordinarily large research project to deal with everybody all at one time, it would be better to have the Joint Commission on Healthcare do this sort of looking individually at different types of populations that are there, and that way we would not have to have a large fiscal impact on this of what's been proposed here. So I would think that we would need to scale it back substantially to be able to do that. And I would note that there is one state that has, basically said they were going to do this, and that state was Vermont. Got up to, spent thousands and hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars on it for coming in from a very small state, with well less than 1 million people in it. And in the end, they got to the point where they were ready to implement, and they said it was too expensive to try to do everything all at once.
So that was the experience of Vermont, and I must say, it seems to me, why would we spend a lot of money on a study that's going to say it's too expensive for us to do this?
Madam Chair, if I could.
That's just my view on this.
Madam. Yes, Madam Chair. I would.
Delegate.
I would briefly respond. The FISC currently says 850,000. It is not 850,000. We actually squeezed it down a lot with appropriation staff, down to 375,000. That is what's in the House budget right now. And it just studies the financing implications. There are pros and cons. There's those out there that say that it actually returns a saving to the taxpayer at the end of the day by reducing the cost of overall healthcare. So I don't think necessarily. Yes, Madam Chair.
Well, I was just going to say it's still a $375,000 general fund cost, somewhere between that and $850,000.
Well, yes, Madam Chair. The appropriation staff worked their best to squeeze it all down, and with coordinating with the Joint Commission on Healthcare's staff and making sure that it does get down to that number. It does not harm us to know what exactly the numbers are. I think that just being able to say that this costs too much, even in the case of, if that be the case, would be worthwhile for the Commonwealth to know, especially given that we have about 2 million people that in the Commonwealth that are overpaying or unable to access healthcare, even with insurance, and 500,000 that don't have any insurance at all. So, we have to understand some sort of guidance from these experts. It's worth noting that this bill was developed with American universities, healthcare economists there, and as well as with the Joint Commission on Healthcare's expertise being involved in that. So, it's a very well-written bill, as Delegate Sickles, Chairman Sickles would tell me, and we are very excited to move it forward, of course, with your support, hopefully, and I hope that it's the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Is there further discussion on the bill? Oh, I see Barker. Senator Barker? No? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Is there a motion on Senator Newman?
I second what I think is the Barker amendment.
What was the Barker amendment?
Basically, my suggestion was that rather than do this large study with consultants and things and sort of try to tackle everything at once, that we ask that this issue be referred back to the Joint Commission on Healthcare, which is where it was started when he proposed it last year, and to try to figure out how we can move forward sequentially to be able to address things over a period of time, and to cut down on the number of people who do not have health care coverage.
Connor, were you able to get that?
Madam Chair, this is Connor from DLS. So was Senator Barker looking to amend the bill to that effect, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, amend it so that it would be sent to the Joint Commission on Healthcare for figuring out how they could begin to deal with things and to address issues that for people who are do not have health coverage right now.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, there's then a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Well, the only thing I just checked, Vermont, Madam Chairman, Vermont's population is 7.5% of ours. Right. If it was $2 billion for them, you'd be looking at almost $28 billion a year for us. If it was based on the same set of parameters.
Do you have a substitute motion there? We have a motion.
What's that? Oh, I move that we refer this issue to the Joint Commission on Healthcare, which was where it was proposed to go last year, and that to begin to evaluate how we can reduce the number of people rather than saying how we would get to universal coverage all at one time.
Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? Okay, there's all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's amended. 1 no, 2 noes on the amendment. Okay, the amendment passes. Is there a motion then on the bill?
Move to report.
But,
I see, Madam Chair, Senator Barker, I think there's some confusion whether you're wanting to do a substitute to send the bill in a more general way to the Joint Commission on Healthcare, or whether you're sending it as a study by letter.
okay, so.
Well, we could do that. There have been.
Do it that way.
Yeah. In the past, actually, some of the things that have come to the Joint Commission on Healthcare have been through this type of process where you have something in the.
Senator Sasslaw, do you have a motion?
Right. You could.
Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, record your vote to PBI and refer.
Madam Chair, if I could briefly speak.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4. The bill is passed by indefinitely, and a letter will go to the Joint Commission on Healthcare. That completes our docket, obviously, and we will be meeting tomorrow afternoon to finish up.